Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to talk about the OC, first 8 episodes of season 1. I really love this show. I really enjoy it. I find it to be the main crux of this entire show is family. How you don't need to be blood to be family. How reasonably I love the relationship between Ryan and Seth, and then eventually Seth with Summer, and reasonably not only that, but the Cohen family altogether is just you're loving the interactions between this whole entire family, and while every other people's family is falling apart and going down in flames, and really they are just hoping for the best for everything to just work its way out. So talking about this in a non-spoiler sense, we have this relationship at first with Ryan and Sandy, how basically Sandy is going out of his way to root for Ryan. Just like, yeah, I want this kid to succeed. Like, hey, kid, do you have a dream? Do you have a goal? And Ryan's just like, what's the point of a dream when it probably will never come true? Ultimately, tying in where he comes from, everyone has to realize that. So Sandy goes into this and is the morality police, basically going into here, and if someone is seemingly putting a finger to his business, he pokes a finger right back at them. And I thought that that was really enjoyable. I thought that that was the most interesting part of the show is somebody is sticking up for the little guy, which that is what Sandy does every single episode. So we have Seth in this show who seems to be a man who is floating off in outer space with the oxygen rope just holding him out there, and he is just watching the world turn. Eventually, when Ryan shows up, Ryan is the one person that is taking that rope and pulling Seth back in. This relationship between Seth and Ryan cements Seth's character because Seth has backstories of just being completely forgotten about within his town, not getting birthday invitations, sailing on his own, or having people take selling lessons. Ultimately, Seth has a boat named after a girl that doesn't even know he exists. And that is like the Leonard and Penny kind of situation where Seth is just pining away over a girl that he thinks is the beautifulest girl he's ever seen. And Summer doesn't even know his name. Doesn't even really doesn't really even care to find Seth interesting, only to find him interesting enough to use him for things. Till eventually it seems that Seth grows a backbone and ultimately just goes, you know what, Summer, I actually think you like me. I think you like me, Summer. How about that? You're an attractive girl. I'm a quasi ballparkingly good looking. We went too far on that one. We went too far. Let's pull back. They're equally good looking. Come on, they're equally good looking. Let's pull back from that. Let's backpedal, I guess, if we're gonna have to do that. Like, hey, Adam Brody is yeah. Adam Brody was on Ready or Not. He was also in Jennifer's Body. Ben McKenzie was in Batman Year One, and he was also in Gotham as James Gordon. But anyways, we within this show we have Ryan being this mysterious man. Very mysterious. Ultimately, nobody knows who he's from, and Ryan doesn't even care to tell them where he's from. Even when he actually tells them the truth, no one believes him. Because everybody is thinking that everybody is from the highest society of the world, and Ryan isn't. Ryan has to come from somewhere, and so does Julie. But no one ever really knows until they really go into, like, hey, aren't you from Riverside? Julie, aren't you from Riverside? Isn't that, hey, like Sandy's from the Bronx. So what? So, anyways, we go into this show, and there's a lot of times where everyone's gossiping away to ultimately lead us to a person that is going to be your best friend one day and then your worst enemy the next, which I kind of find that interesting. How everybody is just championing behind a woman, and then eventually they find one little thing about her, and they're like, God, can we just not have her a part of our lives anymore? I guess that's the most interesting thing about this show. How the tables do a turn. So, Ryan ultimately is counting down the days for him to no longer be in this home because he thinks it's never going to work. Kirsten is basically just, no, he's a felon. He's awful, no. He's an awful boy. Just because he was from prison. Even though Sandy is convincing her and trying to just, like, warm her up to it, it's like, this kid has potential. And and Kirsten is locking away all her fine jewelry. No, she's going and getting Ryan sheets and getting him towels. So here is the real true favorite thing about this show is the relationship between Seth and Summer. How it eventually spirals into working out, because a lot of it seems like luck. It gets to the point to where it seems like a roll of the dice that these two get together, and then that a roll of the dice keeps happening. I think the best point in this show is where ultimately Summer is going into Seth's room and looking all around it and finding one thing to literally have a horse being shoved in Seth's face. Like, what the heck is this? Yeah, every single person in their lives has one thing in the room that they are probably ashamed of. Some people have an entire room of things that they might be ashamed of, and that is completely okay. If anything, people might have movies or shows or whatever that they are ashamed that they watch, but it's a guilty pleasure. So what? So people love unicorns or My Little Ponies, or they like trolls, or they like one thing, and so ultimately they plaster their entire room with it as if they were just slapping the paint like crazy. Let them do it. Who cares? It's okay if reasonably somebody has a fascination about something and wants to find out more about it. Let them do it. Whatever. So, anyways, the best thing that I like about this show is eventually we have it to where Seth eventually makes his own comic book ties the entire town to it, and we have Seth eventually seemingly have the main character basically being Summer, and that happens way later on in the show, not even in the early season, but eventually it I thought it was fascinating. We have Luke that seems to be right away tied to Marissa, and they've been seemingly an item forever until Ryan comes in, and then Marissa is kind of trading glances between her and Ryan, and Luke needs to desperately know why. Every single time they are trading glances, Luke is just like, I want to beat this guy, I want to punch this guy in the face. It's not Ryan's fault that Marissa is just like, that's a nice slice of pie. That's not his fault. Shouldn't Luke be going to Marissa and just be like, hey, why are you looking at him? What is up with this? No, he goes to Ryan and beats him up all the time. That's what happens. So one thing that I will end with on this non spoiler like journey, I think is the biggest part about this is one, Ryan at the very beginning of the show needs to be saved so that way he can save others. And the one thing that always ties me to this show is when Marissa first meets Ryan and she asks him, hey, who are you? And Ryan says, whoever you want me to be. That is the level of I could not give an F face. That's why Marissa finds him so fascinating. Because he, out of everyone, has a I don't give an F about anything face. And reasonably, Ryan is consistently giving an F about Marissa to where he's ultimately taking care of her or talking to her and getting to know her and trying to justify a relationship that will never happen. It won't. It's why I like Seth and Summer so much, is because it'll never happen. Just give up on it now. Yeah, it's a great relationship, but it's never gonna happen. It's no. Just don't even try. Just don't even think. Just no. I guess they just figured that if Ryan and Marissa ever actually got together, that's when the show would have ended. So they just had to keep piling on things. They had to keep piling on the whole Luke thing to where that eventually goes the way it goes. So yeah. Let's go into spoiler territory about these first 8 episodes. Yeah. Check them out. Ultimately, if you haven't seen the OC before, you can check this out on HBO Max. Or, in fact, you can probably find this somewhere else if you look hard enough. Probably another app like a Movie Pro or somewhere else to go to probably find this eventually. So, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time we can do spoil this show. So, these first 8 episodes, the pilot is very interesting. We have no dialogue between Ryan and his brother Trey. And they end up stealing a car and ultimately end up getting caught. Ryan is in prison. Sandy is going through and like, hey, I'm your public defender. I'm here for you. And you know what? I am going out of my way to find out every single thing about you, my future adopted son. Quite possibly, because this is spoiler time now. I'm going to find out your test scores Because why would a lawyer have that kind of information? I feel like to me, a lawyer would not have, like, there's so much about this guy that when Sandy, I guess, takes a real intrigue in someone, he has to dip really down into, like, what is he gonna check their Instagram and their Facebook and whatever, their Twitter page, see what they're doing, Instagrams and such. And probably, if any of that probably actually existed during the time that this show came up, I don't know. They probably wouldn't have went into it anyways. So Sandy takes a real interest in Ryan's test scores, and that's the main crux of him wanting to champion his client, let's just say. Ultimately telling him, "Hey Ryan, have you ever had a dream?" Ryan's like, "Dude, that's never my dream is never gonna come true. Lay off it. Hey man, like you did your best, but I'm not gonna have a family. Like I'm not gonna have a family when I come home. There's no one that's gonna come for me. No one's gonna care. Why should I care?" So Ryan eventually gets out of juvie, comes home, and eventually basically just walks away from home. His mother and stepfather are really just going like, "God, can't you just get your life straight? Can't you clean yourself up?" And Ryan is just like, "God, I just..." People are telling him to get his head on straight, and they don't even have their head on straight. You get drunks, you get gamblers, you get card counters, and this and that, and that's who his family is. So, going on to here, Ryan is just leaving house, leaving home, because ultimately his stepfather is just a drunk and just he wants no part of it. He's calling anybody that he knows to just sleep on a couch for a day, ultimately to end up right back with Sandy because that's the last person he can call. And Sandy's like, "Hey, you could do worse." Sandy drives up to their house, and Ryan is just like, "Hey, how is it that you have the car that you have? Like, you can't get this kind of car with your salary." It's like, well, Sandy mentions is like, "Well, hey, I'm not from money, but my wife is." So Sandy eventually is like, "Should I leave the keys in the car?" Ryan's like, "Meh, like it's no fun if you don't leave the keys." So Sandy's like, "Well, I'll just leave the keys in the car." Ryan gets out to eventually talk to Marissa and ultimately tell her that he's anyone that she wants him to be, and then ultimately Ryan tells her the complete truth about how he got there. Marissa doesn't believe him and ultimately says he's just some cousin from Boston. Sandy's going into the house convincing Kirsten to let a felon sleep in her home, which is not even in her home, it's in her pool house. So if Ryan does anything, it'll just be in the pool house. Kirsten is mentioning that Ryan is probably casing the joint, and so she needs to hide all her fine jewelry. But she won't actually do that. She'll just get Ryan sheets and a towel. So, pushing on, eventually it gets to the point where Seth eventually meets Ryan. They play video games together. They eventually have this big get together at this house because They have to do so many freaking get-togethers in this place. I guess they have nothing else to do but get together and just have these wild parties, or just parties in general. These galas or these banquets, or you have these casino nights, or uh, cotillions, or this and that, and whatever, what have you. We have it to where Ryan is at this get together, and Seth is mentioning, "Hey, welcome to the dark side." Where to when Ryan and Seth go to their party, or their party for the younger kids, that's when Ryan gives him that same sentiment, because Seth has really done nothing with his life, sadly enough. We ultimately find out that while going on a sailing lesson, that Summer Breeze is the name of Seth's boat. And so reasonably, Seth has this masterful plan that he just wants to desperately end up with Summer. That's like, he's just been pining away for this girl, and he just wants it to work out so badly, but he is just naive because she doesn't even know he exists. That's the horrible thing. It is. It's a horrible thing. So within here, we go to this party, and immediately we have it to where instantly Summer is seeing Ryan, and she's like, you know what, I gotta get me a piece of that. That guy is mysterious, he's interesting, there's something about him. I don't know what it is. And so reasonably, eventually Summer is throwing herself at Ryan within this later party that is with the younger crowd, instead of being with this older crowd of people from this place. Ultimately asking Ryan, "Hey, where are you from? Are you from Canada? Are you from Boston? Are you from Michigan? Are you from Massachusetts? Are you from?" And every single time he's just like, whatever, wherever place you want me to be, that's where I'm from. So we have it in here to where we are at the kegger, the party, and welcome to the dark side. And Summer is throwing herself onto Ryan, and Seth is Ryan's only friend at this party, besides seemingly Marissa, where Marissa is just consistently looking at Ryan, ultimately saying, like, "Hey, how do you like the party?" And ultimately he's saying, like, "Well, I can get into a lot of trouble from where I'm from." So, or I think she ultimately throws back to, like, "Hey, how do you like it here?" Or how do you, I don't know how she phrased it exactly, but it doesn't matter. It's ruining the thing by saying it. So we have Ryan, who desperately does not want Summer anywhere near him, because he's trying to, like, pull her off of him, and Summer's just like, "No, like, I want to give me a piece of that." And Seth is already, I guess, a very lightweight and just already drunk, probably off of maybe one sip of something. And so, reasonably, Seth is going to really destroy everything going on in this party. And Seth goes in there and sees Ryan in the midst of Summer. And Seth is just like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, man, like, I told you I wanted her to be mine forever. I named a boat after her." And Summer's like, "What? You did what?" And eventually Ryan is like, "No, that's not what it looks like. I wasn't trying to." And then ultimately Seth brings up that he is actually from Chino, and maybe he should go back. And then everybody's like, oh my god, you're from Chino? And Summer's like, oh my god, you're from Chino? Ew. And yeah, because heaven forbid anybody's white trash in this town. Good grief. You have to wear a tank top all the time, and everybody's like, you're mysterious. But immediately when you find out he's from Chino, you're like, maybe that is why you wore a tank top the whole time. Don't like you anymore. So, anyways, pushing on. There's so much to talk about. So, Seth eventually gets into a fight with Luke because really Luke is just looking at Seth, and every time he's calling him some outlandish like name and beating him up. Ryan comes to Seth's aid and gets beat up as well. To where Luke is just like, hey, welcome to OC, bitch. You always have to have like a new kid in town be welcomed by the veteran people of the town. It always has to be that, and this show goes into that same vein. So the weirdest thing is every single time that Ryan is looking at Marissa, is like, hey, how about we steal a conversation? Luke is stealing away some woman to go out and just make out with or spend time with, and ultimately we're just like, okay, dude, if you have girlfriend, if you already have a horse in the stable, so to speak. I know that's a horrible analogy, but if you already have a woman, why do you need other women? Unless, bizarrely, why women, why? I couldn't even justify why go on to other women when you already have. Yeah, so your relationship is going slow. Who cares? Boo hoo for you. So Marissa doesn't want to go further than making out. So then break it off. Good golly, Miss Molly. But no, I've been with her forever. So wait for her. Good God. If she doesn't want it, then okay. Tie your hands. Duct tape your mouth. And just sit by the side of her bed until she's okay with it. And then, okay, all right. Do whatever you need to do to wait for this person. As long as she's gonna like eventually just look at you and just be like, why do you have the tape? Why are you tied up? I was waiting for you. I was waiting. Anyways, so we have Ryan that ultimately gets into a fight, and Seth is involved. Funny enough, Seth is like, hey man, at some point maybe you should train me on how to like fight really well, and maybe next time we'll take him. I thought that was funny. Like both of them have like these weird head bruises. You can't rationalize what the bruises actually are, because it looks like some weird makeup effects. But anyways, so we have Kirsten getting them up the next day and realizing they have bruises on their face, and she's like, "Oh my god, you guys got into a fight? Sandy is proud of his son." It's like, "Oh my, Seth got into a fight? Yay! Good for him. He did something." And Kirsten's like, "But he got into a fight." Sandy's like, "I don't freaking care. I'll give him an Xbox." Huzzah! He fought somebody. Good for him. Well, get him some gloves. Have Ryan trade him. It'll be a Karate Kid moment. They'll sand the floor and wax on, wax off. Anyways, so we have it to where the best part of this show is when Sandy is talking to Ryan and tying his tie and asking him about, hey, like, you were spending time with my son. How do you like Seth? Ryan's like, Seth is cool. So Sandy has like the biggest smile on his face and like, yeah, I guess he is cool. This is great. Really at the tying of the tie moment. But anyways, there's some key little things here that I just really enjoyed. The little, just small, just little enjoyable moments. That it doesn't have to be like, oh my god, this dramatic story about somebody embezzling money and eventually taking the entire town down with them. No, it's really just these really small moments that, like, somebody where it's just like, maybe Sandy's giving Kirsten some crap, but eventually it's just like, but they love one another and they'll just kind of, one person will just give in, and or one person would have a compromise and it'll be fine. So pushing on, so it seems like Ryan's time is eventually drawing near. It's gonna just get to the point to where Ryan is just like, you know what, I think it's my time to run away again. I think it's my time to leave. Like, I think Kirsten just does not want me here. So Sandy is giving Ryan the papers to eventually say that he's going into foster care. Ryan is signing it, but eventually he's just going to run away. Seth goes with him because he's like, hey man, like, I think easily you're going to be my best friend. I don't care where you end up. I'll maybe try to figure out some way to make it to Chino, and like we'll get together. You can show me your hood or whatever equivalent of this and that. So Ryan and Seth run away together because Seth is just like, well, I didn't have anything to tie me to this town until Ryan got here, and now it seems like he's getting pulled away from me, and I want to go with him. Because it seems like Summer was on Seth's radar when Ryan was there. If Ryan would have never been there, Summer would have never been on Seth's radar. Or Seth would have never been on Summer's radar, meaning. Anyways, so Seth and Summer run away. Seth is on a skateboard. Marissa is just driving around and ultimately sees that both of them are seemingly making a getaway because Seth has a turtleneck on. So Marissa is just driving and she's like, wow, wherever you guys are having me drive to is really far. Seth eventually showcases to Ryan that there is a abandoned home that Kirsten is developing, and so Seth is letting Ryan stay there. Get some candles, some mood lighting. Marissa is giving Ryan a mixtape, bizarrely, because as if, like, hey, we're not in a relationship, but I'm going to give you a mixtape. Yeah, I'm going to give you a mixtape of stuff. Hopefully you like it. So, the interesting aspect of Marissa seemingly slowly but surely starting to see her life fall apart around her. Like, she's seeing people come to her home that are investigators. Ultimately, she talks to her father about it, and her father is like trying to not tell her much of anything or lie to her. And so recently, Marissa is slowly but surely seeing her life fall apart. Slowly but surely, especially when Jimmy goes to Kirsten and desperately needs $100,000, which Kirsten easily gives him. But the entire time she's like, whew, like, God, I am giving away a lot of money to this guy. Ugh. And I didn't even tell Sandy about it, but he'll find out about it later. He will. Anyways, so because Jimmy will basically showcase exactly why he needs the money, because Julie is just buying him into his early grave. Just ordering stuff from a country she's never heard of, buying a horse named China who eventually will get alopecia, and just all kinds of craziness. Buying all kinds of new purses and this and that. So, anyways, when ultimately there's plenty of times where it seems like Marissa has more clothes or whatever to have anywhere, to where Summer ultimately has to try them on. And eventually Seth sees this and he's like, Summer. Old Nelly. But anyways, going on to the story. So Marissa is like seeing the unraveling of strings of her life coming asunder. So really she goes to Ryan as a last resort. She's like, hey, how about we get together? How about we hook up? Like, I'm choosing you. And Ryan is just like, well, wrong place, wrong time. There's, like, if anything, me having you here is going to keep me here, because like, I am going to easily fall for you, and I am going to forcibly have to stay, which means I'm gonna forcibly have to be in foster care, which who knows where that's even gonna go. And he's probably thinking about leaving anyways, because he had a stepdad at some point who was doing construction, which eventually will lead us to, I think, be Kevin Sorbo within the later seasons. So we have it with, or I could be wrong about, or that Kevin Sorbo actually could be his biological. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Uh, so Ryan eventually has this moment with Marissa where it could cement this relationship, but instead he's throwing it away. It's like, dude, like, I get it that your life is falling apart, so you think that you need to easily run away with me, but that's not going to solve your problems. Which ultimately, when Marissa runs off and Ryan runs after her because he probably realizes how much a mistake this was to tell her this, because he is running away as well. Luke finds Marissa's car and then finds Ryan, and then ultimately beats him up, burns down this home, to where ultimately Ryan has to, instead of running away again from another problem, he ends up confronting it and gets arrested yet again. Going into juvie, to where ultimately Kirsten has to forcibly pull him out of juvie because some prisoner is death threatening him. And ultimately, when Ryan comes to Kirsten's aid, Kirsten is just like, okay, well, I need to figure out some way to get Ryan released from juvie and then adopt him. So we have it to where in this show that Ryan eventually has to eventually make his way to getting into school. But that happens towards the end of these 8 episodes. Really, it seems that as they are getting these get togethers, these white night events, and casino nights and such, it seems like we find out more secrets about this town. When they have the cotillion, eventually everyone finds out that Jimmy Cooper is a fraud and has been stealing from everybody. In the casino night, we find out that Ryan's mother is a drunk and she falls over, and Ryan has to take more than long enough because I guess he's not actually in the scene to get to his mother. Or maybe it seemed like Ryan was like right there at that spot that people were, and then he like takes a while to get her. Like I was like, dude, I thought like he was right there in that scene, but I guess I was completely wrong. Um, which I thought was interesting. Maybe they shot that stuff out of sequence, or I don't know. So eventually we get to where they have this cotillion, and Brian has to learn to dance, which ultimately, when he learns to dance, he has to he's trying to be so soft with Marissa. Every time it's a little touch, and she's like or and then like everyone is looking at them and they're like yeah, there's something there. There's some sparks of flying. We ultimately have Anna, who is the new girl in town that is going to end up with the bad boy of Orange County, because Ryan is left with Anna because Marissa is going with Luke, and Summer is stuck with Seth, and Summer is trying to pay anybody any kind of sum of money to not end up dancing with Seth. And then Summer is eventually, when like some people don't want to show up at this cotillion, Summer's just like, well, I'll just dance with Luke then. And Seth is just like, really? Okay, fine. So then Seth goes with Anna and finds out that Anna is a comic book nerd, and he's like, oh my god, she is so fascinating. I gotta get me some of that. And so when Summer is ultimately just left just standing around because everything is working out with everyone else, and or and Summer's just like, hey, where's my date? Because Marissa is dancing with Ryan because Luke left. Summer is just left. Who am I gonna dance? And Seth is just like, yeah, I'm not gonna dance with you. I'm gonna dance with Anna. You, Summer, you bailed on me. Summer's left on her own. Boo hoo for her. Cry me a river. Because that's what happens when you go to the casino and have Seth blow on your dice, and he's your lucky charm, but then eventually, like, you're still treating him like dirt, because eventually, whenever they eventually go to school together, Summer's like, yeah, I don't even know who you are, because I'm going to pretend that I don't know who you are. Even when they have that Caleb's birthday party, Summer is making Seth introduce her to all these rich miser like people, and Seth just ultimately gets frustrated about it. Because he's like, you know what? All these guys were staring at your chest the entire time. They didn't give a crap about anything that you said to them or whatever. Like, and recently, me, I know everything about you. I know what your birthday is. I know, like, you did a speech about a mermaid, and Like, I know that you were just hesitant about speaking in front of people because you cared about what they thought or what they were going to say about you. And then ultimately, Summer finally kisses Seth. I think I remember at some point, like, Summer just going like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that I am falling in love with Seth Cohen." I think that, like, how Summer is just consistently to where she's cementing this relationship with Seth. How Summer is just like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I'm actually going out with this nerd, this geek, this non-existent like person, and now I just can't stop thinking about him." And I love that. I loved that where Seth got into Summer's head so badly that she's finally cementing this relationship, which never in a million years should have worked out for Seth, but it does, luckily. So Seth Seth eventually goes into the mode of, well, I'm going to play hard to get now with Summer because she's been treating me like crap. When eventually Ryan actually gets to school and seems to be going for a placement test after the journeys of Tijuana, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Summer and Seth eventually go into needing Seth to put his foot down on Summer to basically just say, "You know what? Like, I think you're into me. I think you are. And I'm sick of you just treating me like garbage. Gotta do something about this." Like, if you know what, it's not gonna work, then I will just go somewhere else. And Summer's just like, "Where will I go?" "Yeah, Summer, where are you gonna end up now that you kissed the Seth Cohen? Where are you gonna end up? Where are you gonna go? Huh?" Anyways, so Caleb's birthday party ultimately ends up having Caleb be a very interesting, kind of villainous character, which ultimately is kind of putting like his finger into everyone's business, and he's like giving them the riot act, or he's kind of like just like, "Hey, you burnt down my house," or "Hey, like, uh, Kirsten, it doesn't really seem like your life is good enough to my liking. Well, I'm gonna make you do less work at your job because I think I'm making you work so much that you don't want to even speak to me anymore. So I'm gonna make you have less work." And Kirsten's like, "You know what? Maybe I should just quit." And Sandy's like, "Yeah, quit, quit the job. Tell him you're gonna quit. Tell him you're gonna do. I'll tell him. Can I tell him?" And Kirsten is like, "Wait a minute. No, no, that's not." And Sandy's like, "Yeah, quit. Let's go to this other home that we had before. We had a good family. We had a good home there. It was a fixer-upper, that home." But yeah, so Kayla's birthday party, you have a 24-year-old grandmother, which ultimately ends up in seemingly more and more Ryan's face. He's going, "You know what? You're an outsider of this family. I don't think you're gonna tell anybody. So you know what? I'm just gonna pop your collar a little bit, or I'm just gonna kind of ruffle your hair a little bit, or I'm just gonna ask if you're gonna have a girlfriend to go to some party or some cotillion or some whatever, and see if you have somebody, because then I'm gonna pounce." His grandmother is pouncing on him, and eventually they kiss, and Ryan is so weirded out by this, and Seth eventually is kind of pinging on Ryan. It's like, hey, like, what's going on with you? What's up? Ryan confesses that him and his own grandmother hooked up. It's like, what? Like, dude, I was joking. And Ryan was like, yeah, and it was really weird. Like, dude, there's nothing legal about it. Like, it's not actually seemingly official. Like, really, for Caleb's wife, supposedly it was just a business transaction for her. It was basically just like her being with him was for him just needing entertainment because really the only woman that he ever loved died years ago. And ultimately, when Caleb eventually talks to Kirsten and really talks, he brings up about her mother. And it was such a sweet moment. And I really like that how there is some soft spot to Caleb, which is of course Kirsten, and maybe he felt betrayed that Kirsten doesn't talk to him. But the sweet moment when Caleb brings up about their mother and ultimately how their mother would have brought a brought somebody home like Ryan. And Kirsten goes, well, yeah, she would have just done that to just tick you off. Funny, sweet little tender moments. And Caleb is just like, you know what, if you want to resign, you can resign. But hey, like reasonably, like don't be late on Monday. Like do whatever you want. It's okay. Like I know that you love me and I know that like I know I can be a pain in the butt sometimes. There's a lot of stuff said without having to say it. A lot of stuff. But it's all just good and fun and just anyways, so eventually Marissa is again trying to cement, hey, maybe it's that time for me to get with Ryan. That pool boy, I don't know, it's something about him. Ultimately making her way to get to Ryan, and Ryan is in the midst of making out with his grandmother, bizarrely. And Marissa is just like, oh my god, with somebody. And so I need to get with somebody. And that person is Luke, pushing the fact that they need to take their relationship to the next step, which she ultimately does not want. You can kind of tell the entire time that she's in the bed with Luke, she's like, I wanted to be with Ryan. This is a mistake. Ultimately, when Summer is backtracking and checking, like, hey, how was the first time? Did it hurt a little? I think Marissa was just really just hated it because it wasn't Ryan. The entire time she probably had to pretend it was Ryan, and that was the whole thing about it of how she really didn't talk about it. It was because it's like, yeah, but it wasn't the one person that I wanted. It was just the person I was second best with, or second. Uh, I was left at the altar, so I went with. You know what I mean? Is the only option because option A was taken. So option B was just like, well, okay, I'll just go with Luke. I'll just finally push this relationship because something is just never going to happen with Ryan. So it seems like there are nice tender moments with Luke and Marissa. There are points when they're holding hands, or ultimately they're both pushing the slot machine together, this and that. So, but again, everything goes horribly awry once we get to Tijuana. Everything goes horribly awry. So let's get to that. cementing now that portion. So Seth wants to fake go to a convention. Like, hey, yeah, like I go every year to Comic Con, but instead, how about we go to Tijuana instead? Ryan's like, I don't know. Like, ultimately, that sounds like trouble. Something is going to happen that is ultimately going to blow up in our faces, and I'm trying desperately as much as possible to get into the win column with these parents, with my new parents, with Sandy and Kirsten. Like, I'm just trying desperately just get a win column into their favor to where they'll love me or something. Uh, Instead of Ryan telling Kirsten to build him a home, instead it's like he won't have to just backpedal and just be like, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, stepmom and dad. Which he never will call them that. It'll always be Kirsten or Sandy because that's what he does, even if he actually doesn't even call them that. Anyways, so they go their way to Tijuana, and here's the thing. So Jimmy is on the rocks, and eventually Jimmy is on the rocks, and Sandy's helping him out, eventually illegally helping him out to because he wants a friend. He wants a friend out of all this. Uh, Jimmy is probably the only one person that he thinks Sandy thinks can be his friend bizarrely because he was a guy that just everything just blew up in his face and it wasn't 100% his fault. It's not his fault that Julie is the way she is. And so, yeah, so Julie is going to divorce Jimmy. And Jimmy, while Marissa is gone away to Tijuana, is moving everything out of the house. So Marissa doesn't know that they're getting a divorce and that everything is still unraveling. So we have it to where Ryan is still putting the moves on Marissa, even though reasonably Luke is still going to be her her boyfriend. Because Ryan is really just like putting her hand or he's kind of like quasi spooning Marissa. I think really just to comfort her because reasonably he heard the phone call about Ryan heard the phone call that Marissa was finding out that her father was getting a divorce and moving out. Every single bit of it, I guess. Because that phone was like really loud, I guess. So Ryan heard everything. He was Superman. He was like, I hear everything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Marissa. Because your phone call was really loud. I heard everything. So Ryan is really there to comfort her because why wouldn't you try to do that? Even if you're not like her boyfriend, just try to comfort the person. Because really, it's just like Matt, like, it's stuff sucks for Marissa, I guess. So Ryan comforts her and basically just says like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just turned that way. My apologies." Come on, Ryan. It's okay to comfort Marissa as long as it seems like you're on the like she does want you. It's just like still wrong place, wrong time every time. So we get it to where Summer and Summer and Seth are making their way to Tijuana and they're bickering like old biddies, like an old married couple already. It's like, dude, like you've barely been a couple or you aren't even barely cementing you are a couple. to where Seth has to cement that they are a couple, but Summer is just like I am just going to make you miserable so that way you won't want to like look at me and just be like, what a nice slice of pie there. What a nice just that woman. So Summer is telling Seth to keep her distance, even when they're sharing a bed together. It's like, if you make a move, you lose a hand, kind of thing. And because Summer suffers from rage blackouts. So Seth is cementing this relationship. Summer is just like, man, whatever. Like, no. Like, I'm going to fight this for a while longer. So, while going to Tijuana, they all end up having a car accident, which all gets them delayed to be in Tijuana, to where Luke is already in Tijuana and throwing himself into the arms of another woman because Marissa isn't there within seconds. So Luke is in the arms of another woman and a bed of another woman, and eventually partying in a club with another woman because, again, Marissa is late, seemingly for seconds. So he's just like, well, I couldn't have waited for you. So I'm just going to jump in the arms of the next woman. Man, you should have scheduled that thing a little bit better, Luke. Ryan. Where was I going with that one? You should have scheduled that meeting with that other girl a little bit later, Luke, because what happens is Marissa, Luke, and Seth and Summer eventually actually make it to the party where Luke is at. And Luke and his seemingly girl that he is with for that day, they are making out. Marissa's like, how could you do this to me, Luke? How could you do this? And like Luke's girlfriend is just going off where it's like, yeah, he does this all the time. He's been with every woman in the OC. And reasonably, Summer is just like, oh my god, shut the F up. Like, Marissa's parents are getting a divorce, and Seth is just kind of like arm barring or whatever he could do to keep Summer away from this girl. And he's like, yeah, she suffers from rage blackouts. God, he's like hauling her off because he doesn't want her to kill anybody. So we eventually have it to where Marissa is just like, oh my god, the one shoulder that she thought that she could cry on is sharing a shoulder with another woman. And shouldn't this have been the moment where Marissa is just like, oh my god, can I just be with Ryan now? But instead she does something else. We have it to where Ryan and Marissa were looking at ding-dongs or cheese sticks. And Marissa was just like, well, hey, you know why I went to your pool house? Ryan's like, every day. Every day, I just want to know what you were going to say, what you were going to tell me. But it's not my fault that you waited too long. It's not my fault that you couldn't make up you couldn't make a decision whether you were wanting to be with Luke or being with Ryan. That's the problem. Marissa waited too long, and so decisions were made for her that blew up in her face. She waited too long. That was her biggest mistake. She couldn't open her mouth and just say, yeah, Ryan, you're the one. She couldn't have just said, could you have texted him? Sent him an email? Tweeted? Was she busy that day? yeah, it's so Marissa was, but I get it. Sometimes when ultimately, like, I should probably try to get back with some people, or by typing away, texting away, and there's sometimes where I regret that as well. Where I'm like, God, yeah, I should have. Even if it would probably be something that you would, this person would get back later, is something as small as that, where it just shows the initiative. But it's just like, well, it's 2 in the morning here, 2 in the morning here, and she's probably garbage. I am, but at least the thought is there. At least the thought is there. Isn't is that anything? Is that at least a good thing? I guess that is. Anyways, I'm a piece of. It's PM. Anyways, but yeah, that's the problem of just going like, yeah, but like she's probably moved on. She's probably doing well, and things are probably going great for her. And let's talk about something else. So Marissa in Tijuana, God, it's stupid. Um. Anyways, we have Marissa that should have cemented. Okay, Ryan time now. Ryan comforted me. Ryan was trying his best. How about like Ryan time now? It's perfect time, but instead no. Marissa took a bunch of painkillers and just was trying to numb her pain away. Ultimately, for Ryan to find her in a ditch somewhere. Here's the thing. So Ryan obviously carried Marissa to his pool house in the early episodes. If you kind of look how Ryan is picking Marissa up now compared to that scene, I'm like, was there a double that Ryan was carrying early on? Because, like, you could just see Marissa's neck and head just way out there compared to the other person that was in the earlier episodes. I'm like, okay, what the heck is, like, was he just carrying her a different way? Was like, because obviously Marissa is really tall, and maybe the other person wasn't asked. I don't know. I'm not judging Ryan. Like, hey, if you're carrying a person, you're carrying a person. Not everybody can pick a person up. Ultimately, probably I don't have that kind of strength now, and if I did, I'd just be like, oh, I guess, sure, I guess I am that strong, I guess. But then more than likely, be like, ah, my back, or ah, my something else, or maybe my spine will do a little pop pop, because every once in a while that happens. And then I'm like, yeah, my back hurts now. My back hurts, my back hurts, my back hurts. Like Mr. Deeds. Anyways, so I'm not dragging this out. I'm not. So we have Tijuana ultimately leading to seemingly Marissa getting her stomach pumped, I guess. Trolls me, she ends up in the hospital, and then that's when Sandy and Kirsten are finding out that Seth and Ryan went to Tijuana, and Kirsten's just like, "Well, hey, I wanna figure out about this whole Tijuana tobacco," and reasonably they're just kind of letting it go. Hey, they're kids having fun. Let them have fun. At least Seth is having a relationship, so give Ryan points for that. Seems like Seth and Summer are being a thing, so let it go, Kirsten, because your son is in a relationship. Be happy for him. and let him go and just not get grounded, because ultimately they grounded Seth, and then he was just left to just like, dude, I've been grounded for I don't know how long. Because ultimately, when Ryan was here, like, I was having the best time of my life. So, anyways, eventually we have Kirsten, who is so worried about her child that she needs a therapist to come in, and she thinks that she needs to, or Kirsten. Julie thinks that Marissa needs to get away from everybody and everywhere, especially Jimmy, because that's the one thing that Marissa actually loves is actually her father. And so Julie is trying to ship Marissa off because she wants nothing. She thinks that everything is being tied to Ryan. Ryan is making Marissa act out, but no, really, everything is just going wrong for Marissa, and Ryan is just the spoke on the wheel that eventually just pops up every once in a while, and it has nothing to do with Ryan. It just is, I guess, the X factor that I guess Julie is thinking is what's really happening when it's not. It's not. So Marissa is eventually getting to talk to this doctor, and the doctor is just like, well, I could have her do some local treatments with me or send her off to some facility. And Julie is like, yeah, send her off. Ship her off to some crazy town, some crazy place. And so here's where Marissa is going to run away. So we've already had the three people that were going to run away earlier all at some point are going to run away again. At some point, we had Ryan run away, and Seth eventually ran away with Ryan. But now Marissa is going to run away because she was with the runaway party. Is Summer going to run away at some point? No, she won't. Anyways, so Ryan comes to get her to ultimately save her from Julie, because Ryan was doing a test to place himself into this school, and so Ryan misses the test because Seth and Summer ultimately are trying to get Marissa out of going to a mental hospital. Here's the interesting episode where Seth is consistently mentioning to everyone that they're studying naked. Seth mentions that Ryan is studying naked and it's a Zen thing, and for Kirsten to not go out to him to help us study, which is so weird. But then eventually Seth goes into his room and there's a knock at the door, and Seth mentions, hey, don't come in, I'm studying naked. And Summer's like, oh my god, you people are so weird. So Seth just easily opens the door, and Summer is just like, should I look, I guess? Maybe he has a big book in his hand. A big book. Because ultimately, like, Seth got to look at her, so why doesn't she get to look at him, so to speak? But really, it just went and had her just walk all over his room and then just grab a horse that was Captain Oates. And she's like, what the heck is this? He's like, that's Captain Oates. She's like, why do you have a horse? He's like, yeah, so I have a horse. So what? So Summer's eventually like, well, you need to come and you need to help me with Marissa and you need to get Ryan. And you know what? I would have really, like, I think Seth should have really milked this out. Really honestly should have been, well, what am I going to get for a reward for doing all this? Just be like, I'm not going to do anything for you. Why should I do anything for you? What am I going to get in return? You gonna kiss me again, Summer? No? Well, then, you then. Like, I'm gonna sit in my house and study naked. You. Why should I do anything for you? You treat me like garbage. You. I'm out. Pieces. Deuces. But Seth is just like, okay, I'll do something for you. I'll help you. So Seth and Summer get Ryan. Ryan ditches his test and goes and gets Marissa. Luke, ultimately, at some point, there's an entire episode that I skipped on about where ultimately Luke gets shot. And ultimately, the funniest line that I remember is when Marissa has to mention that Luke got shot because it sounded very like Western. Luke, you got shot. That weird, like, did Marissa actually, did the actor have an accent? And, or maybe that was some joke or some, like, she didn't know how to deliver the line or something. Like, I don't know, maybe Misha Barton actually had some accent. And when she was saying that, like, her accent was slipping in a little bit. I don't know, but there was some weird, like, Luke, you got shot. It's like, what was that delivery? Because if anything, there was some Corona guy that went into a party with Luke, and he ended up getting shot because he hated how all these OC people were thinking that they were better from anybody from Chino or Corona, and so ultimately that's when the shots were fired, and ultimately there was a whole entire episode where uh, Ryan had to go to the rescue of Seth consistently instead of going on a date with Marissa. The only thing that Ryan and Marissa got to do was throw one another in a pool and ultimately have a little intimate moment, which was quickly snuffed out by Seth. So, because Seth wanted to see a stripper at some party, so if Luke getting with Marissa, I guess. So going back to Tijuana and going back into eventually ending this review, there's probably a lot of stuff that I just kind of glanced over and quickly got through and within this review. But I don't know, I really enjoyed this show, and more than likely there are some points where I probably will backpedal, and because that's how I enjoy this show is just kind of backpedaling and just going, oh yeah, there's also this really fun moment that I really liked. So Marissa ends up being put in the arms of Jimmy, ultimately telling Marissa telling Jimmy that Julie was trying to send her away to some facility. Jimmy calls Julie like, "Hey, what the f? This is not what I agreed to. Sending my daughter off to uh, some mental hospital somewhere." Jimmy is trying to fight for custody, but Jimmy will tell Marissa that Julie has him over a barrel. There's nothing he can do. Eventually, it gets to the point to where Ryan is telling Julie that she has to let Marissa go and be whoever she wants to be and be with Jimmy. Ultimately, cementing that I get he gets that Julie is like him, or she's from Riverside and he's from Chino, and any number of these people are giving them anything that they've ever wanted, and to let that slip away is just like, no, we can't have that happen. But Marissa needs to be happy, and Julie is snuffing that out. And so you really just need Julie to, or you really just need Marissa to carve her own path, and ultimately for her to be happy with whatever she chooses to do, whether it's with Ryan, whether it's with anyone else besides Ryan, because that's where it'll usually end up, and this and that and whatever and what have you. So I think that's where we'll just kind of taper off with this review. There's probably a lot of stuff that I just quickly went over. There's probably going to be a lot of spots where I'm just like, oh my god, I forgot to mention this. But when looking at it, there's so much to go over. The best thing is the Seth Summer relationship. Basically, just watch the show for that. It's the greatest thing. It is. But anyways, I'm gonna greatest hits my way out of here. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.